So last week, I did the first part in a new series called Marriage and Dating Misconceptions. It was part one, and last time we explored and unpacked the idea that we have of the one that we're supposed to find in life and romantically. And I had a lot of fun destroying all your romantic dreams about the one. It was awesome. Today, we're going to look at the idea of you complete me. And we're going to see what Scripture says about that, what makes sense, what we've experienced. So let me start with this question. It seems like it doesn't relate at all. Hands raised, hands not. How many of you enjoy puzzles? Puzzles. I love jigsaw puzzles. Joseph's like, You got some marriages, yes, some no. My wife does not like puzzles. I'm a puzzle family. All my kids puzzle. It's great. What'd you say? Sudoku. I'm really good at Sudoku puzzles, actually. Word search. Ew. No, it's true. That's good too. So, puzzles. The worst thing about doing a puzzle, though, is when you get to the end of the puzzle and you realize you're missing a piece. It's the worst feeling in the world. Okay, well, I'm just telling you it is. Okay?
It's terrible.
It's terrible. I want to cry.
Or the corners all soggy.
Oh, all
sad.
So, we have tons of puzzles, and I have lots of kids, which means we have lots of puzzles with missing pieces. And so, my kids are regularly doing puzzles, this week included, and they'll get to the end and they're like, there's pieces missing. Which to that, my wife's radar goes off. She comes over, how many pieces are missing? Which my kids know instantly is almost a death sentence for their puzzle. Because they know if the number is too high, Mom's going to chuck that puzzle into the garbage. I said, no, I can find the pieces, I promise. I love this puzzle, Mom. You know, it's kind of fun. But that happened this week. Now, this puzzle way of thinking about missing pieces and stuff can work its way into our lives sometimes. We get this idea where we look at ourselves as a puzzle and we feel like missing pieces. And we wonder what's wrong, why are we incomplete, who could deal us this lot in life. And I want to give you guys kind of 5 truths. I'm not a point preacher like 3 P's to help your life. I don't do that. But I want to give you kind of 5 truths as we're moving along in this about this you complete me idea. And the first one I'm going to start with is a difficult truth. And I'll get to the good news later, but first I want to be just raw and honest with you. First truth today, when you look at yourself as a puzzle missing a piece, you are right. You're correct. You're incomplete. You're broken. The Bible says pretty clearly in Romans 3:23, Paul's writing says that we have all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It's not a mystery. We look out to the world, we see broken people do terrible things, and we know that we too have missed the mark. We're not perfect. We have issues, we have needs, we have insecurities, all of us. Now in life, when there's something missing, a piece, whatever, what do? We look for it, just like my kids are looking for their pieces. We look to find what will fill the space. We try food, we try wealth, we try adventure, like jumping off South Point at midnight tonight. It's ridiculous. Please come back alive. We try all kinds of things to fill those missing pieces in our lives. The biggest thing that we all try to fill is relationships. You gotta love them. We all try to fill those missing pieces, okay? And here's what happens. We try it with friendship, we try it with dating, even marriage to fulfill us. And some of these things, they bring us joy, sometimes not, but the joy comes from dating, relationships, temporary, but sometimes we feel like it's enough. Sometimes we think it solved our problems. This is where we get this idea of you complete me, from those relationships, those moments where we feel like, man, this is what I've been looking for. And I want to show you a pretty famous clip right now with this idea from the movie. No? Oh, you don't know. Famous phrase, because you guys have looked, see the first service is a little older, so they knew this movie. It's from 97.
Oh, you complete me.
From what movie? You have to watch. Here we go, this is Jerry Maguire. There you go. Tom Cruise, here we go.
I'm looking for my wife. Wait. Okay. Okay. This is where it has to happen. This is where it has to happen. I'm not letting you get rid of me. How about that? This used to be my specialty. You know, I was good at living room. They sent me in there. I'd do it alone. And now I just... But tonight, our little project, our company, had a very good night. A very, very big night. But it wasn't complete. It wasn't nearly close to being in the same vicinity as complete. Because I couldn't share it with you. I couldn't hear your voice. Or laugh about it with you. I'm a smart wife. We live in a cynical world. A cynical world. And we work in a business of tough competitors. I love you. You complete me. And I'm just as...
Just shut up. You had me at hello. You had me at hello.
And all the ladies.
That was disgusting.
You need some anime? Okay. Famous scene in the movie. That's great stuff. But it's one of the most famous lines of that movie. You know, I'm going to try and suck up the tears myself right here now. But here's the thing. We have this idea that when you find that one, you know, they complete me. But here's the truth, is that this completeness doesn't last, even in the best marriages. What I mean by that, I've been married almost 15 years now this summer, is that there are days when you will still feel broken, like, is this the right match for me? Did I make the right choice? And you wonder if you picked the right partner. I don't really feel complete or full, even though I'm married to this person. Here's an example. It's a little mean. Let me go over this. Now, when Tom Cruise was playing Jerry Maguire in this movie, and he uttered these famous words, "You complete me," he was married to his second wife, Nicole Kidman. I got this off another article. I thought it was interesting. Cruise and Kidman divorced 5 years after that line, which afterwards Cruise entered a romantic relationship with Penelope Cruz. Then he followed that with a third marriage, also unsuccessful, to Katie Holmes, which someone said leads the cynic to suggest that it actually takes more than just the one to complete Tom Cruise. But that kind of ruins the whole romance of the movie, doesn't it? But we know that about movie stars and stuff like that. But I want us to know that there's something different to this idea that I just find the right person, it'll fit, and it'll be perfect. We set ourselves up for some real letdowns through that. In Genesis 2:24, you got a Bible, you can follow along, you can use your phone, I'm going to have it up on the screen. Genesis 2:24, we learn that when a man and a woman are joined together, they become one flesh. The writer of Genesis tells us this: man shall leave his father and mother, will fast to his wife, and shall become one flesh. Biblical. Some people take this to mean that without having a significant other in our life, you're somehow incomplete. They kind of look at this and think, okay, the math is, for marriage, half a person plus half a person equals a whole person. And that has, mathematically, it makes sense, but marriage is not half plus a half equals a whole. Genesis math is one whole person plus one whole person mysteriously makes one person. You're not a half person and a half person trying to fit these pieces and you're trying to figure out life. Okay? The idea of a soulmate who completes us, this kind of broken hearts that fit together, doesn't come from the Bible at all. If you search it out, what I found was that it actually comes from Plato. In Plato, ancient Greek times, believed in these Greek gods, Zeus and others, and he believed that early Earth history, there must have been humans who were asexual, not male or female. They were so powerful that the gods had split them in half to make them half a person, so they weren't so powerful. Which sounds ridiculous to us today, but we still believe this idea, like if I just find my perfect other half, everything in life will just be easier. But that's not how it works. What the Bible teaches is that we have been separated from our other half, but that we've been separated from God, from sin, and that He is what's missing from our lives. Beginning of Genesis, Adam and Eve sin, and it separates them from God, and humans have been doing that ever since in history. You and I sin, and it breaks the relationship. And we're only complete when Christ makes us whole again. Marriage is amazing, but it's secondary to the wholeness and the amazingness of who Christ is and the fullness that He brings. And I'll speak more on that later. Dig into that. But I want to get back to this idea of you complete me first and kind of finish it off. What's implied by this romantic you complete me phrase is that all the single people in the world are incomplete. And many of you guys felt that last Sunday on Singles Awareness Day. So thanks a bunch. You know, American marketing, I feel terrible. I'll just eat myself some candy now and feel better. And my brother, we were joking, I get to visit him briefly on my way flying this week. He's 33. He's like, yep, happy Singles Awareness Day, 33, and still single. You know, we get this marketing from people we know and from media and movies that until we find the right person puzzle piece in our life, we're incomplete. And that's not what the Bible teaches. In fact, it's kind of the opposite of what the Bible teaches if you look into it. I mean, last week we talked about 1 Corinthians, and Paul writes to the people in Corinth, he's talking about his life, and in 1 Corinthians 7, I'll throw one verse here, short example, but read the whole section. He says, the unmarried and the widows, I say that it's good for them to remain single as I am. Paul doesn't say, you're a mess, you're a social reject, go get yourself a spouse and fix your life. No, he says, it's good you stay single. Yes, that's what it says. And he goes on to explain, because I want you to be free from the cares of this world. You get into dating and marriage, you're going to have difficulties. Yes, there are benefits. The Bible talks about those. But he says if you don't have those, you can focus completely on a bunch of other stuff, including God's will for your life. Now, I'm not preaching everybody make a promise on the Bible tonight you'll be single the rest of your life. That's not what we're doing here tonight. It's okay to have a spouse and pick someone to marry. The Bible, Paul writes that real clearly. He said to think it'd be easier, though, if we didn't. Our oneness is not found by finding another person to fit that missing piece. Our wholeness is found with Christ. We have to know that first. Now, in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 2, talks about, God created the world, He makes Adam. In Genesis 2:18, God says it's not good for the man to be alone. Okay? God says, find a helper, fit for him. A lot of people look at this like, oh, see, everybody's supposed to be married. That's not necessarily the point here. The point was that it wasn't good for anyone to be alone. We need human relationships. That is true. God's created us to need each other. It doesn't say, therefore, everyone should be married because of Genesis 2:18. It's not good for a man to be alone. He should go find a wife. If you're a single man, you're a failure. That's not what it says, because then Jesus would be a failure. And He wasn't perfect. Paul, another great revival, never married. It's fine. That was their choice. Don't let anyone tell you you're incomplete just because you don't have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever. So there is a fullness to be found, though, and there is incompleteness to be fixed. And I want to start in John 1, not just because it's a cool book that I'm named after, but because I think it has something neat to say about Jesus. Look at John chapter 1 here. The disciple John is writing this. He's introducing us to who Jesus is in this book. And he goes through and talks about the Word. He's talking about Jesus, the voice of God here. Verse 14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We have seen His glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. That key word full is going to be important. Full of grace and truth. Verse 15, John the Baptist bore witness about him and cried out, this was he of whom I said, he comes after me and ranks before me because he was before me, which is really confusing. But it basically means, this is the one who's greater than I am, who I told you was going to come after I started my ministry, and he's greater than I am, Jesus. Verse 16, John goes on, from his fullness, Jesus's, we have all received grace upon grace. From his fullness. Verse 17, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Go back to verse 16 if you can. I love how John lays out his purpose here in verse 16. And from his fullness, we've all received grace upon grace. This week as I was studying and preparing, thinking about this, it dawned on me for the first time in a long time, the fullness of Christ and how important that is to us. You and I, we are all broken. We all have missing pieces. We all fall short. But Jesus doesn't. He was the first complete person in the history of mankind. He is full. He lacks nothing. That's an amazing thought if you think about it. Jesus was complete. He didn't need anything. He had no insecurities. He didn't come to the earth because I'm missing something. I need something personally. He's the one you want as your friend. I want you to imagine a friend who needs nothing, has no desires other than to bless and serve and help people. Wasn't the person you want to keep as close to you as possible? I mean, they're not going to do the whole, hey, can you lend me 20 bucks? Or, oh, my day was terrible. I just need to emotionally throw up on you because I'm doing so bad. Jesus never did that to anyone because he's perfect. He was full. He was complete. Imagine if we walked with Jesus. That would have been so cool. Because he would have just been there serving at any moment, helping out people who were in need, giving words of kindness, not to get something back later, just because he cared. He was overflowing with this. And this Jesus still exists for us today, overflowing to us if we want him, full, ready to serve and help. And I wish I could live like that. I mean, if I could live like that, I would have so many more friends. Versus people who feel like, he just wants me to come because he needs me for this, or he wants this for his agenda. Imagine if our church lived like that, where we're just ready to serve anyone at the drop of a hat. It's a weird saying, but oh well. Can I pick that up for you, Ryan? Man, I'll clean it off for you. Oh, look at her. She's doing all self-righteous on you. Imagine if we lived like that, like Jesus. We would have so many friends and the world would see something different in us. Now, even though we're not perfect and we fail, when we trust in Jesus, in his fullness, in his perfection, we can be filled. That is the truth. And I want to look at Ephesians chapter 3 now. Paul writes about this and explains this to us a bit more. Paul's kind of wordy. I like to make fun of him because he goes on for a long time. Okay? But I'm going to sum it up for you at the end. But I want to read what he says here in his letter to Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 14. Paul writes, for this reason, he's talking about this whole chapter he's summing up. For this reason, I bow my knees, praying before the Father. The Father from whom every family in heaven and earth has been named. We've all been created. He knows the names. He knows the hairs on our head. This God, who I'm praying to, verse 16, that according to the riches of his glory, his power, that he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being. God gives us the Spirit to fill us, to give us power. Okay? Verse 17, so that, I pray this, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you being rooted and grounded in love, Verse 18, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth, the length, the height, the depth. Everything unimaginable, unmeasurable. Do you understand the unmeasurable? Wouldn't it mean to understand the unmeasurable? This is what Paul's praying for. Verse 19, to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, to know things that surpass knowledge. I want you to know this, Paul says, that you may be filled with the fullness of God. Sum it up, I just wish Paul would say, for this reason I pray that you be filled with all the fullness of God. Wouldn't that be like the Cliff Notes version, I guess? But he wants to make sure you don't miss the hugeness of that. This is an all-powerful God who knows everything, that we can pray to, who sent us Christ to get inside of us, to fill us, to give us knowledge of great things that are unmeasurable, the love that he has for us. Why? To fill us with the fullness of God. Even back then, these people in Ephesus, the people he was writing this letter to, they were broken, like you and I. They had sin issues. They had a world they were trying to live in that was messed up. And he's wanting them to know, you can have fullness in Christ. That was his prayer. To be filled with the fullness of God. Verse 4, our hearts can be full through faith in Jesus. That is the truth of the Scripture, of the whole gospel, the good news, the New Testament. There's no other way. Paul said it there, Christ in our hearts through faith. He lines that out earlier in this chapter 2. Chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, he wrote, for by grace you've been saved through faith. Grace, it's a gift. You've been saved through faith, through belief. This is not your own doing. It's a gift of God. And he's repeating that. Verse 9, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. It's not someone who has the best church attendance. It's not someone who has the best dress, who says the right things, or scrubs their hands the most to be clean. Look, God, I deserve this grace. I'm good. You can give it to me now. It's a gift. You can't earn it. You can't earn it. I can't earn it. You can't earn it. Just by believing in him, we get this. Now, maybe you're thinking here. You're thinking with me, okay, Pastor John, I get it all, been to church a lot, heard the whole grace, heard the whole faith thing. In fact, I even believe. But I don't feel full yet. What's going on here? Maybe you got disoriented or disconnected with church or God because you feel like, man, I did that whole little dance and I don't feel all that perfect. Well, clearly, it's not a 1, 2, 3 step and you're good. It's a process. And the Bible lays that out. Paul writes one of his other letters in Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. He says, I am sure of this. Paul says, I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. It's a process. What he started, he will finish the day of Christ. We as Christians are all in process of becoming full, becoming complete, being made whole. It doesn't happen immediately. You get life. You're saved the moment you put faith in him. That could be tonight for one of you. But it's still a process. The Bible doesn't use this word, but there's a big word they use to sum it up called sanctification. You can sound really holy by saying that today, Nate. Sanctification. I don't use those kind of words. I'm not trying to make myself sound smart. I had to learn this too. But it's the process of being sanctified. The process of being made holy. The process, the journey of being perfected. And we're all in that process. And Paul says, what was started in you when you believed in Christ will be completed at your death or when Christ comes again. That's his promise to us. Now maybe you're thinking, well, that didn't help. I feel more depressed. You told me it's not going to happen the moment I get saved. I'm being straightforward with you. It doesn't happen the moment you get saved. It's not like, oh, everything is perfect in life now. It's a process. But here's what's important about that. The process gives us hope. Christ has promised, what I started, I will finish. And God has a promise from someone who's whole, who's perfect, not some bum on the side of the street who isn't good for what he says. This is the God of all creation says, I'm going to finish what I started. It gives us hope. There's an adventure ahead too. If it was a 1, 2, 3, and then I'm done, I'd be like, well, that's cool. Now what's left? The rest of life is kind of worthless then because I've already finished everything. No, there's an adventure of becoming more like Christ, of learning to be filled, to be fully like him, to see your life bring fruit that feeds the world and makes a difference. That's the adventure of Christianity. It's not a letdown. It's like, man, there's a whole life to explore. I love exploring. I've been on this island 30 years now this month. Seen tons of it. I still love seeking out new places and finding cool new things to do. It's the same way with our faith. There's always something to learn. There's always an area to grow. There's always an edge to adventure out. Missions, service, and loving other people. There's hope tomorrow, no matter what happened today. Christ, who is full and ready to serve, will finish what he started in you. He hasn't given up, and he is full, overflowing. So the final point here today, when it comes to relationships, again, we talked about the only person who can fill you is Christ. And the more we're filled with Jesus, the more we're able to love from that fullness instead of our need. If you go out and try to put people together and say, well, here's my needs and here's your needs, and I'll do that for you, you do that for me, and can we kind of make this work? It's not really love. It's a contract. You do your part, I'll do my part, and we'll make this work. And some marriages work that way, but it's not love. But if you say, you know what? This God, this Jesus completes me, and from that I'm overflowing in love and care for you, and forget my needs for a while, I'm just going to take care of you. And when the other person does the same thing, then love flows so much stronger. You can love from a fullness instead of a brokenness and need where you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of mentality. We can serve from our fullness and not our brokenness. There are many things that can be improved in a marriage, but the biggest thing that can be improved is ourselves. To fix our own brokenness, we need to do it through Christ, who is full. I was reading an article on dating and this topic of finding the right one, and I came across this that sums up these truths well for a lot of you guys who are single or dating right now. So listen up. You ready? Dating couples. No, none there. But anyone who's single, listen up. Here's what they said. For someone who's dating, if I was single, I'd look for a person who looks to God to complete him or her. And I'd run from anyone who might bury me with the expectation that I could ever complete them. Run from it. I was talking to a girl this past week who was explaining this relationship she was in with this guy and how he was just sucking the life out of her. He was just taking. And have you been in those relationships before? If you haven't, it wasn't you guys, I wasn't picking on you. And I was talking to her, and I was just mostly listening. She was laying out, and she knew what was going on. And out of her kindness, she was trying to fulfill that. It only works until you run out of energy. And we do, because we're not full. She had to break it off. She knew it. When we try to just take from other people, it'll just drain them. If you run into a guy or a girl who's like that in a relationship, trying to say, I need you to complete me. I can't live without you. Run. Run. Okay? It's not going to work. Like I said last week, before you try and find the one, you have to be the one. You're only going to have a healthy relationship if you yourself have found fullness. And that, again, comes fully through Christ. Knowing who you are because he created you, knowing what he's called you to do. And then when you both come, one fully, you can make a beautiful marriage where you're not laying expectations of, but I thought you were going to take care of all my needs. I'm a pretty good husband. I fall short pretty regularly for my wife because I'm broken. But she doesn't depend on me for her fullness. She depends on Christ. That's how it's supposed to be. I want to close with a couple things here. First off, if you don't know this Jesus, even said, yes, I'm going to choose to believe and put my faith in that. Tonight, I want you to have that opportunity. You have that opportunity any moment. You don't have to be in church, but it makes sense. We just talked about this gospel of who Jesus is. And so tonight, I want to ask if that's something that you've understood for the first time tonight. Like, I get it. I fall short. I have sinned. messed up this broken relationship, but I also see that Christ is full, He's perfect. He came, He gave His life to fix everything. And if I just have faith, if I believe in Him, I start this new journey of life where He begins filling me. And I don't usually do this. I don't do big altar calls and I'm going to lay hands and I'm going to all this stuff. But tonight I'm going to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes. And then in a second I'm going to ask if anybody wants to raise their hand. So everybody just close your eyes and bow your heads.
Won't relent until
like you're not in the room. Wanna look right at you, wanna sing right to you. I don't wanna talk